the Northwest Colorado newspapers. You can just search anything. So I searched Shorty and what they did in their communities. And then their daughter, this little girl, wrote about her life. So I'm taking a lot of excerpts about what she said about her mom and dad. Welcome. Penny's here. So, of course, then I'm like, oh my God, I gotta talk about community too. What is community? Community, the actual definition is the sense of belonging with shared experiences, goals, and the same location, in the same location, and a commitment to helping others. That summed up my talk. I went, yes! So, how did this cafe strengthen the community? In the back of your mind, these are the questions I'm going to answer. It was a gathering place for the 4 F's. Food, family, friends, and fun. Right? And it was also a physical setting for all the gossip, all the politics, all the, new happenings in the community and in the world. World War I was discussed hugely. And then they took in high schoolers from outlying communities, because back then with a horse, you couldn't attend school if you were far out. You had to come into town for the winter. So they boarded all kinds of teachers but they didn't have the cafe right away. So we're going to start here. And Shorty's father, his name was Louis Constant Huguenin, and he lived in Switzerland. He died in 1917. Next. This is his mother, Maria Meserly. She was also French descent. They were married in 1873 in Switzerland, and they immigrated in 1877. Shorty, their son, was 11 months old when they came over. Next. Here is Shorty. He ended up running away from home when he was 14. He had 10 brothers and sisters. No, he had 10 sisters. He had 10 sisters. So he ended up running away, or not running, but, removing himself. And he ended up being a ranch hand in eastern Colorado. That's how he got to Colorado.
Diane, how's he related to you? Have you said that yet?
Oh, I'm sorry. He's my great-grandfather on my mom's side. The Holderness side in Hayden. So, immigrated when he was 11 months. Next.
Yes.
There's, his family had moved from Canada, and in 1900, when he was 24, he was a ranch hand over in eastern Colorado. Well, there was a big ranch in Hayden called the Carey Ranch. They had like 30,000 acres or whatever. He had a friend that got hurt, so he came over to nurse him back to health, and then he stayed. And then he worked on the Carey Ranch, did all kinds of things. Then, next, he meets Stella. She's not 15 there, but she's pretty young, 15. Her side of the family, next, they came down from Canada and Oregon. They were so poor, they lived in a tent. That was their home. And she had many brothers and sisters too. She had 5 sisters and 4 brothers. And she was actually, they came to Colorado for work. Her dad, Frank, here, next, he was really into the sawmill business. So they were on eastern Colorado. She was born in Haxton, Colorado. They came over to Hayden, and he was doing a bunch of sawmill work. So there was a lot of building going on. And they were married, get this. So Stella, her family moves. She stays at 15 when she's in Hayden. He comes here. They got married in 1905. She was 16 and he was 29. There you go. So that's kind of a 16, 29-year-old. I don't have the exact dates, right? Okay. So Stella was at the time employed probably like waitressing in rooms or who knows. Next. They had 2 little girls, Flora and Marie. Marie is my grandmother. She died in 06 at like 90-something. Can't remember exactly. So, Grandma Marie, that's fine, that little girl, that little baby, she's the one who I'm going to take some of this narration from. She wrote about her life. And she says, The first thing I remember in my life when I was 4, we were living on a homestead called Elkhead. Elkhead was a schoolhouse about 10 miles north, way out in the middle of nowhere past Hayden. And she says, I don't know how long we lived there. My folks never talked about us, about those early years. I presume they were hard and they were so busy trying to make ends meet. Maybe they didn't want to remember it. So times were really hard and everyone was super poor and eking out livings. I do remember a little donkey, Baby Burl, the highlight of her life. Next. She says, so apparently Baby Burl's in town too. I can't figure this out. If they're way up in Elkhead, there's one that's in town. But that was the love of their life. Next. They also had a team. My dad had a team of horses and my dad did some farming. He was working for the McKinley Ranch up there. Then, next. What a woman. This is Stella. She says, I remember we lived on Elkhead Creek and my mom would catch fish when she wanted them for a meal. We also had deer and other wild meats, and my mother was a very good fisherman. She would also kill a deer as well as my dad when we needed it. How awesome it is to have a picture to go along with this narration. Right?
She has pants on too.
Yeah, it's like a riding suit.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were like culottes. They used to have like dresses, split skirts. Thank you. That's what it's called. Next. So then, there he is. You see that long rifle? He has pheasant there. Next.
Oh, there.
Ducks. Big ducks. Mallards. Next. Shorty was as tall as me, 5 foot tall. Then they moved to Mount Harris for work.
Oh, wow.
And this is,
It's a great
Highway
picture.
40 would have been right along there. So the next little excerpt is that in 1914, in the Colorado newspapers, it says, Shorty and family will take up their residence in Harris. Shorty has a lot of work to do for his painting and papering. He was known for papering all the walls, doing lots of painting, a little bit of carpentry. And then Grandma Marie says, when I was 5 years old, my folks moved to Mount Harris, where the mine was being developed. Mount Harris was a town 7 miles east of Hayden. My dad helped build the store, the drugstore, the community center, and other town buildings. My mother ran the boarding house and cooked for the miners, who didn't have families, because they had all these little, they had a big boarding house, like a community center, and then people that had families had individual houses. So she took care of the wayward miners. And she said she always loved to cook through the years. She fed hundreds of people. Her pies were known for miles and miles around. So she says, Flora and I played with the Mount Harris children, and Mr. McConnell ran the local railroad. My dad never stayed long in one place. So, back up to she started first grade in Hayden, and then was back up to Elkhead. Next, there they are in Mount Harris in their little house, Marie and my aunt, and you can tell it's Mount Harris because there's the characteristic rock. Next, and there is Shorty with the pipe, the short one, sitting there. And I think it's Stella way in the back, but it's too hard to see. Don't you love the laundry, the washboard? And I don't know why this is on such high porch stilts.
Yeah. No railings.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is a rain barrel.
Yep.
Right? Look at the fashions, that 20s look. Yeah, next. So then now they're back up at Elkhead, and her and her sister, Marie is that one, and her older sister, there was a little bit of difference. Shorty and Stella are in the back, and this is the school teacher. Don't know the lady and the other girl. Next. So here's a picture way up. That the teacherage is on the right, and that's the schoolhouse. They mined the rock out of the local outcroppings. The whole community came together. Ferry Carpenter was a very well-known figure here, and he's the one who pretty much started the school districts. You had to have 50 children to have a school district. This was the finest schoolhouse in western Colorado, all made out of rock.
Is it still there?
Yes.
Yes.
A private family owns it now, and they have restored it, and they give tours sometimes.
Is that
In that house?
No, it's up.
That's
Oh, that's
way
up.
north of Hayden.
Oh, okay.
You could only access it by horseback, 10 miles. Yeah, next, the next one.
Go again.
Okay, see, okay, here's indicative, this is the front steps. Do you think they were rich? No. They eked out a living that you couldn't believe. There's hardly anything up there, really hard to grow crops. I don't know how these families survived. But my grandma has fond memories up there. It was a community. Everything happened in the schoolhouse. St. Valentine's Day, Christmas, you name it. She said that when they moved back, Ferry Carpenter was always getting new school teachers in because school teachers couldn't be married. So they'd get a cute little school teacher in there. She'd get married off within 6 months, and he had lots of connections because he was a lawyer from back east, and he sent out ads to these adventurous spinsters. And then they'd marry off. This whole valley in the 1900s was very well educated with school teacher mothers. Right? Yeah, okay. So, let's see, where am I at? Okay, next. Ferry Carpenter, I think this is so fun. These are his boy rangers. Ferry Carpenter would take all the boys and they'd go hunting and fishing, and he taught them how to pound nails and do all the survival skills. And these are the boy rangers, and Ferry's up there. He was such an influence in the community. Next. Okay, so there's baby Burrow again. Stella is the mom that's gonna start this cafe later. Miss Bodfish in the back there, she's now a Fulton in Hayden. And my grandma says about her, she says, the teachers that stayed with us both married local men right away. And one of them was a special friend through the years, Ruth Bodfish Fulton. She was a young girl from Boston. She taught me to knit, crochet, and she would take her on her lap and read to me. Which was something I never forgot, because my parents were always so busy making a living, I didn't get much attention. And she read me books. We didn't have books. She had books. And she said it was amazing. She was also a music teacher. She taught music to all these kids. Okay, next. What do you think that is?
Must be Thanksgiving.
That is the best answer I've ever gotten. This is called the Campfire Girls. They had their own chapter up there in Elkhead. And during the war effort, they made little candy boxes, and Shorty auctioned them off, and they made a whole $12.50 for the war effort. So meanwhile, Shorty and Stella were living in the teacherage, kind of cooking and taking care of, and then he builds his own little cabin right around 1917. And they had a Red Cross benefit dance, because in 1917 they had to raise all these counties around Colorado. They would come up with a pledge to raise for the war effort, and they did it through Red Cross, women's homes groups. This county raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and everyone was poor through the war. And then they were still paying off war bonds clear up into 1921. The war was very patriotic, we gotta do this. We gotta crank this out. Women were knitting socks and selling them, and you can't believe what they raised. So the Red Cross benefit supper and dance, the night of the 14th, 1917, was a decided success. Shorty was the auctioneer, so already you know what he's gonna be like. Right? Auctioneers are a different breed. He was an auctioneer and he made a good job of doing it, keeping the house in a roar, and he got high prices for the boxes. Well, the women would make supper boxes and then they'd auction them off.
Huh.
They made $115 that night. Not so bad for a sparsely settled country. That's from the newspaper. And then, of course, the little campfire girls also made their money. So then they moved out of the teacher each to a little house that Shorty had built. And my grandma says, when at Elkhead, it was a happy time. There were many youngsters going to school. Many families lived near the vicinity. I had friends to play with. Next. We also milked cows. We had a pet cow, we milked cows. Look at that, look at their coats and their wool mittens. And they're up there, you can barely see the teacherage. Next. We love to ski. She says, we played together, skied, climbed hills, and were inseparable. This next slide will show her best friend. In winter, we'd ski down the hills, and we did have a time getting back up. Our clothes and equipment were not like nowadays. We would be frozen stiff, but we were happy, and we never knew we laughed. I love how she does that. Oops. Oh, well. Next. Her best friend was Minnie Jones Camilletti. The Camillettis that live in Milner, that was a grandma of theirs. And they were inseparable all their life. They had so much fun. Oh, and on the last one, did you see they had poles instead of sticks? Yes. Okay, next. This is out of this book, Honor Roll of Routt County, 1917, 18, and 19. They did a whole thing of all the guys that had, we have to do the president and the generals. And then they have all the men and women that served. Women stayed at home, but they have all men and women served. This is Stella down here. Mrs. L.C. Huguenin, Mrs. Louis Cutston Huguenin. Back then, women didn't have a first name. They were always addressed as Mrs. And so she was a worker and chairman of sewing. And I know a lot of these names, Wheelers, Nays, a lot of these people are still in the valley, their families. Next. Ready for this? Short, Routt County Fair, big thing, horse races. He had a racehorse. He'd wait all year and there was a big match off with Brown Sugar. Shorty Huguenin had Brown Sugar, we gotta beat Brown Sugar. So he had a racehorse. Okay, next. And that's a good looking horse for back then.
Yes.
And that's Stella holding the horse. Doesn't she look happy about it? My grandma said, my dad had some racehorses, but it never really made money. So read between the lines. Right? Okay. Next, let's see what's next. Okay, now we're getting to the actual cafe. Before the cafe, well, even while running the cafe, it's always Shorty's Cafe. Well, you know who really ran this.
Yeah.
Shorty kept doing all his other professions. He was a barber, a house painter, a wallpaper hanger, a butcher, a carpenter, and also doing odd jobs till he was 76. So when you're in Hayden, when you're going through Hayden and you got the big convenience store there, and there's a little brick building right before it on Main Street, that's where his cafe was, on the corner there. It's since been torn down. I love the linoleum. They, Shorty.
Wallpaper.
Yeah. So, let me find where it says. In 1921, he started the cafe in 1917. So I'm gonna show you what's interesting is, see the papered wall, papered ceilings coming down, they have that one little light bulb? And they were known for their ice cream parlor and pies besides regular food fare. And back here, Marie, my grandma, says that we had a little house behind that we kept the boarders, and we lived back there. She goes, but I really lived in the restaurant. And next slide. Then, here's another one, and you can see the counter where all the goods are, and they sold other things. There's that big old light going down. We got the same table and chairs, and then in 1921, it says, improving the lunchroom. You can go to the next slide. Elsie Huguenin has installed a fine soda fountain in the Hayden lunchroom. It is one of the best in this part of the state. Don't you love the sensation? We think sensationalism now in the news? No, it goes way back. It's the best in the state and has every modern convenience. Shorty has also added a new ceiling to the room and extended the room by taking out partitions. The walls will be papered, and when this is done, Shorty will have an ice cream parlor of which he may be proud.
Better lights.
So,
better lights.
yes. Well, back then, before electricity, those other two, they had a 5-gallon ice cream. They had a 5-gallon ice cream. They made their own ice cream. Then later, they came to Steamboat, and there was a dairy here that would provide ice cream for them. But they made their own ice cream for several years. Then there's a little news article in the newspapers. It says, here's what really community is about. Just a second, I gotta pull this up. It's a good thing I don't need glasses.
It's dark too.
So they opened Shorty's Cafe, and then they closed it. They went back up to Hellhead. Then they came back in 1919 and opened it up again. It was just like they were following work all the time. It was in a little building on the corner of Jefferson and Walnut. They bought the brick building, and which it was the Hayden Post Office for years, in later years. Shorty and Stella always had an interest in young folk, and during the time they ran the cafe, they kept 17 youngsters who worked for their mom, for their room and board while attending Hayden. And then they list some of them. And it says Shorty's Cafe is more than just a cafe. It was a community meeting place. They boarded the Hayden school teachers. The Lions Club met there. They had weekly luncheon meetings for other businesses. It was for bachelors and the homeless. They never turned anyone away for a meal. And they were all fed. In the days of the Moffat train, okay, Moffat train came from Denver and they had to go over Corona Pass in the snow sheds. That Moffat train was dubbed local snickering, the damn slow and late. Because if there was a snow slide up there, it could take days to clear it, it could take hours. So the little train station in Hayden, if the train didn't come in, you had nowhere to go. So Shorty would keep his cafe open at night, all night long, and they would laugh. I don't know what they did, but they would converse, and it was very lively until the train got there. So this is where it says, in the days of the Moffat train, with their irregular schedule and delays, sometimes even for days due to the snow and severe weather, this resulted in the cafe being used as the waiting place for travelers. Many nights there were all-night parties waiting for the train to either come home or to leave. The Route County Fair were always big events. It was more than a fair, it was a fall celebration. And after shipping the cattle and getting all the harvest in, Hayden was known for the wheat, barley, and oats, cattle and alfalfa. But there was a lot of farming going on then, which they don't do as much now. So everyone entered the celebration with exhibits in the rodeo. The cafe buzzed with excitement during this time. People came from all surrounding areas for the good foods. Stella was an excellent cook, and her homemade pies were known throughout the entire region and beyond. Her happiest moments were when people enjoyed her food. Well, I had the pleasure of knowing her till I was 12. The first thing she'd come from Boise, Idaho, and say, "Do you need to eat?" And I have all her recipes. I've cooked for Hunters for 30 years, and I'd like to say that Stella's DNA is in me, and I've carried on the tradition. So they raised their own, Shorty and Stella raised their own milk cows, and they sold milk, and they used the cream for homemade ice cream for the cafe. The freezers were 5-gallon containers, and they were turned by hand as there was no electric motors. I'll bet you those little high school kids were doing that too, right? The cafe had only one soda fountain in town for years. In 1945, Shorty sold the cafe to Tommy Scott and Jack Holderness. Next,
Stella.
here's Stella later in life. In 1941, she divorced Shorty, which was never done. So I asked my aunt, well, why did that happen? And my aunt goes, oh, you know our family with the alcoholism, he was a mean drunk. So we have to have the old with, the bad with the new. He did so much philanthropic stuff for the community, and he and Stella worked well together, but that hidden alcoholism is devastating. So she goes off to Smith River, California, to the logging camps with the great big redwoods. I'll tell you later about that. Next. Here is one of the sleighs coming from the train depot into town there. That's how they transported all those people that were waiting. Next. Shorty also had an ice business. This is the ice sled, and this is Stella and his oldest daughter, and he had an ice house, which would be the convenience store in Hayden. If you went one block back towards the tracks, there was an old barn there. He would cut ice all winter, store it in there, throw sawdust on it, and then he'd sell ice in the summers. And my cousins have these great big ice tongs. It's really cool. Next. There's Stella in her older years. Shorty also received in 1928 a big ice contract for Colorado Utah Coal and for Victor Fuel to service all their workers. So it was quite a lucrative business. Here she is in her old age. I just remember her jewelry. She had all that costume jewelry. It was amazing. Next. This is Shorty in his old age. And if you read in the newspaper articles, he was a charter member of the Lions Club. They had a community development club. Of course, he was keeper of the fairgrounds, so his racehorses had the best racetrack. But in his older age, he just did odd jobs. You can see his overalls. I'm sure he continued painting, and he lived in a kind of a shack. Next. Here's Stella in her old age with her sister, and they did a really cool article on she can bake a cherry pie, and she went on to marry another very kind, nice man who was the great-grandfather I knew, Ernest Stevenson, and he loved rodeos. They lived in Boise, Idaho. I've never seen her so happy. They were just this cute little couple that held hands. I had no idea her life before that, because I didn't care when I was 12. Next. Here's her in front of those logs. This is one tree. Wow. Those are her helpers that help her cook for the loggers. Next. Here's in the kitchen. And she was known to put out 20 pies a day. Next, here's the loggers. Look at that rough crew. You think they had a good appetite? I'm sure, I mean, I just can't imagine cooking for that many people. Next. There's Shorty in his old age. He always wore a bolo tie, and he had a great big old silver belt buckle. So for what you lack in height, you can show off your belly. Okay. I thought this was interesting.
Oh, my.
That's on the way to Hayden.
Yeah.
We forget the conveniences we have. I don't know how the other person, did they have to back up? I don't know. But communities were small and stayed in communities. That's why I put this picture in here. Hayden was its own little community, but in the summers, everyone was out. We had baseball teams. They went on huge picnics of local pioneer picnics, and they went to dances at all the schoolhouses, sometimes even 20 miles away. But in winter, you stayed in your community, and you had your local kids groups put on plays and choral minstrel groups. Apparently Shorty was part of the minstrels. There's a little blurb in there saying Shorty was part of the minstrels, and the men sang, and he and Bowden were the best darkies ever. And I'm like, do you know what that means? Oh, I'm glad we don't have to do that nowadays. And then here's the other way.
They made it out.
Isn't that something?
Road looks about the same.
Yeah, it's from the other side, right? So, wow, I didn't think I would get through this. I went through all the slides in a half hour.
You've got more slides.
But I have more to talk about. Okay. There's so many newspaper clips you just can't believe. Like in 1919 with this horse, it says, there will be a matched race tomorrow afternoon at the fairgrounds between the Huguenot's Horse Sugar and a mare from Buck Mountain. Buck Mountain would be north. And then he was always helping the community. It says in Elkhead, Miss Wrench was a single lady up on a homestead. And it says, Shorty brought a load of lumber from Hayden for Miss Wrench so she could complete her porch. I don't know if he got paid for it, I don't know. And then he also brought a miner from Mount Harris in 1990 to help with the cottonwood mine up there. He was also into a little bit of mining. I'm sure it was coal mining. Let's see. Eastern teachers, sorry about this. In 1916, he got an award at the fairgrounds, at the local fair for dairy cattle. He was with the local farmers union type, and he'd give talks on dairy cattle. He loved to milk cows. I remember in my old age, he still had a cow. And he would just drink that fresh cream, and he'd have a great mustache. Yep.
When did he pass away? Sure.
1964.
So how old?
Oh yeah. This is my grandma's great-grandma. Here's me. I just remember her as being the most laughing. Well, Grandma Marie, her daughter, says, my mom was always laughing, always upbeat. She had a very hard life. And so she lived for her great-grandchildren. When she came here, she'd grab us all and we'd run to Craig, and there was the Ben Franklin store. And she'd have like 6 of us, and she'd bring us in like chicks, and she'd stand there and she goes, okay kids, you can pick out one toy, anything you want. And we were just amazed. We could pick one toy. Every time she came, she would buy us all a toy. Yeah. The next slide,
Christmas?
is that,
No, there's another one. Sorry.
there's no other slides?
No, there are. It's Christmas.
Christmas, oh yeah, Shorty, we played Santa.
With the dog.
And look how thin he is there, so I don't know what year this was. But in his later life, Shorty was very rotund. There's the silver belt buckle.
Oh, yeah.
That's my little brother. This is how I remember Grandpa Shorty. He was just this little old, kind of like an elf. He never talked,
Oh,
you know, and we'd have to get to pictures with him, and we'd all kind of sit by him and go, "Hi, we don't know who you are," right? And so doing this talk, I learned so much about his life, because I never had an experience with him. There he is with his children that were great-grandchildren in Hayden. Look at how short he is compared to us.
So
Yeah.
he lived in Hayden where you were living, but you didn't know him.
I don't remember hanging out with him. I just have very fond memories of Stella and her husband. I'm not even sure. I knew his name was Grandpa Shorty, but I didn't know where he fit in. And when you're a kid, you don't know. We never did things with him. He
Except
never.
take pictures.
Yeah, except take pictures. Yeah, they have to do the pictures. Those are the only pictures I have of him in my childhood. And so it's very strange to have a great-grandfather you don't know, and then you find out he had this huge, rich life, and he had all these skills. But I have a cousin, and then I have a second cousin, who are wheeler dealers. The second cousin is now the state auctioneer of the state, Greg Medvesk from Hayden. He got it from him! When I read all those newspaper articles, yeah, good time is had with Shorty. During the 4th of July fireworks, he was passing out selling fireworks, and he lured him in with free lemonade. I mean, if you read between the lines. Shorty provided free lemonade, and he was selling fireworks. So I'm reading between the lines that this guy knew how to talk the talk and walk the walk of selling things, selling himself, but at the same time doing good things for the community.
He never
Right?
remarried?
What?
He never remarried.
No, he never did. I remember, there he is, it says L.C. Shorty Huguenin, a person rich in Western heritage and spirit and a familiar face to the Hayden community is honored this week by the Northwest Colorado Press. He was a subscriber to the first issue of the Routt County Republican over 58 years ago in 1903, when the paper started. He became a resident of Hayden in 1901, and and saw Frank Scott bring in the first press and type to the building, which was then located west of Bear River Co-op. He has been, and it lists all the stuff he did. Shorty, soon to be 85, enjoys excellent health and reads the press every week. So they gave him a nice little, after 85, he got the paper free. His subscription was free. So they did a write-up in the paper. Way back when, they had fundraisers for the war effort, which was astounding. Up in Elkhead, he was in charge of collecting and soliciting war bonds. He was secretary of the school district up there for a while. In the war effort, I just gotta show you. You cannot believe how this county came together. I think it's in the back. Okay. Routt County Bank collected $55,700 for the war effort. Bank of Steamboat, $29,004. Yampa Valley Bank, $28,000. This is over the years. First National Bank, $28,000. Bank of Yampa, $25,000. How did they raise this kind of money? First National of Hayden, $25,000, and the Stockman's Bank, $6,000. They issued Liberty loans, and you had to pledge in your community, we're going to raise so much money in Liberty loans. Then you go around door to door knocking, come on. And then I'm sure there was some camaraderie of who could donate the most too. Yeah. What was I going to, then the mines contributed a lot to the war effort too. But it was the local, it was kids going without, it was moms and dads. And they were, a lot of the people around here sold cream to Denver. I'm sure there was some outside selling too, but it is amazing how they raised that much money. I don't know how they did it. You wouldn't see that nowadays. The patriotism, yeah. So, let's see.
So he was like 89 when he died?
You know, I did not add that up. Let's see what it would be. It was 1876 to 1964. What do you think that is? A second. Ooh, do we have mathematicians? What, how much? I can't do it in my head. Gosh, I was hoping somebody just was like, okay, 1964 minus 1876. It's 24.
24. 90. It was 90.
Yeah,
89 or 90.
89 or 90. Isn't that something?
Such a hard life, but to have such a long life.
Yeah. And, trying to think what else.
Yeah.
Diane, what was his name, his given name?
L.C. Huguenin, Louis Constant Huguenin. So in Switzerland, there was a huge French communities that were immigrants, and he is French descent, but he was born in Switzerland. So,
I want your last slide. Do you want
What?
to do the last slide you made?
oh yeah,
Okay.
this slide, I just had to just read it. I'm encouraging you guys to start documenting your lives for your future generations. They may not be interested now, but think about how much is in your body and why you're like you are to a certain extent. It's because of your ancestors. And their struggles are, they're finding out that struggles then are carried in our DNA, and that's why sometimes we're a little reactive to certain things. We're still carrying some of that struggle. And we're also carrying the celebrations and that fortitude to move on. So I love that quote. You guys have any more questions?
Back.
If they came over and lived in a tent, did they stay in the tent all winter?
They were up in Oregon when that was taken, and then they came down to Colorado. And I'm trying to find information. They came out of Canada. I'll bet they were illegal immigrants. Right? The feared word right now? Think about it. They went across from Canada, they're in Oregon eking out a living, they come to Colorado. Some of their children are born in the United States, and then they went back to Oregon.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Yeah, but I can't, yeah, living in a tent. And you can see why they left. Shorty left when he was 14, she left when she was 15. When you have 9 brothers and sisters, and Shorty was the only boy, he had 9 sisters. And I don't know where he was in the row of that, but he was the only boy. So I can see why he left. Yeah, sisters can be bossy, right? Yeah, sisters can be very bossy. I was one of them. So,
What do you think of Shorty's that you have that is being carried on? I would say your work ethic, but what do you think what part of him is in you?
well,
Besides the alcohol, I'm just kidding.
yeah, I can talk a lot. And
You talker.
yeah, I'm a talker too. And I might be a little bit of an embellisher to make the story better, but when the historical talks, I try to stick to the facts. But if I tell a story over and over, it gets better and better, and it gets bigger and bigger. I am guilty of that, so I think that's partly, I have his height.
Yes.
I had, well, in my later years, I was pretty rotund like him for a long time. But I think it's that it's just get her done. It's that hopeful that you're just gonna make it. Because you have hard things that happen in your life, and you just put one foot in front of the other, and you just keep going. And I think that's been passed down in my family, that pioneer spirit, plus a bunch of you. And then when you start researching, you go, oh my gosh, they didn't have running water? Every day I get up and go like this, I go, thank you, Lord. Right? You forget.
How about every time we go on 40 going west?
Yeah.
Yes. Good, touche. Yeah. And just, I mean, I was looking at the clothes. Oh my gosh. We have these synthetic materials that dry in 5 minutes. We've got Gore-Tex. Back then,
Whoa.
when you got those little mittens that were hand knit by your mom, when they got wet, what happened? Ice balls. You know? I grew up in rubber overshoes. And we took Wonder Bread sacks and put them on our feet, then our socks, our wool socks, and then the plastic. Because it kept the moisture out from your foot. Did you sweat too? It was the best technology we had. Yep. And I am so glad, you women in here, are you glad you weren't raised with 5 skirts? 5 skirts, corsets, top coats, having to sit on a horse side saddle. Of course, that went away in the Wild West.
No
It was
side
like,
saddle.
oh yeah. We were very uncouth here, just like the Perry Mansfield. Those women are dancing out there. You can see their ankles. Well, once women got here, they purposely started wearing jeans because you lived on a horse here. That was your transportation. That was your way of making food. With the plowing, that was your best friend. Your kids were raised on it. You put a 2-year-old on a horse, and there we go. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad that we have all the modern conveniences. I don't remember which lady said it, but when they do the 3-wire winter things, one of the ladies, they asked her, what was good about the old days? And that lady said, they're gone. They're up and gone. And I just laughed, yeah, that was a good one. Shorty and Stella, I think, had a marriage probably of more convenience. I'm reading between the lines. If she was 15 and he was 29, it was hard for a woman to be on her own, alone, and then they had a shared vision of raising 2 kids, and they moved around everywhere. And I don't have any reports from family lore that there were dissension. I think they just got her done. And my Grandma Marie, I love how when you get old you reminisce, and she goes, I was such a quiet child, and I was very, what would the word be? I was very serious. Are you kidding? I got high school photos of her drinking beer, pulling her skirt up, running around. She was, when I had Laurel Watson scan a bunch of photos of hers, she goes, your Grandma Marie was a little pistol, wasn't she? And I wish I had it on me, but Grandma Marie, when she was probably in her teens, do you guys know what skunk cabbage is?
Yeah.
I have a picture of her where her and her friend sewed a dress of skunk cabbage.
Please, yeah.
Who does that? Yeah, it's really cute. You can see her from her knees down and her bare arms, and they're modeling this skunk, just right here, skunk cabbage. It's so cute. So I think Shorty came down through her. She came from him, and I mean, like, I can talk a lot about my Grandma Marie because I knew her compared to Shorty. Grandma Marie was that grandma in her 70s, and 70s now isn't like 70s back then. We act younger. She was in her 70s, and my cousin and I have a picture of us doing the can-can in the kitchen. And she hiked with us, and she you know, it was really cool. This was a big thing for Grandma Marie. She talks about the Elkhead Schoolhouse, about how we were so poor. But these teachers came in from these wealthy communities, like, you know, that book, Nothing Daunted, where the two ladies came from Auburn. She said, we got such culture from them. They taught us those teachers taught me how to set a table, a proper table, and how to entertain, how to play the piano, knit and crochet, like she said. And she said, we had such culture for such a small community, and they told us of the outside places. Did that affect her and her sister? Because they did go to college. In the 1920s, she attended the Aggies, which is now Colorado State University. It was called Aggies. She said, I went a year and a half, and I came back, and you know, I knew a friend in high school, but I didn't really know him. And I came back after college for a year and a half, and I married him right away. And Fred, my grandpa, was a basketball star, and he went and played over at CU, whatever CU was called back then. And they got married right away and raised a family, and they were poor as dirt too. They worked their way up. Yeah. And yeah.
Didn't you have a relative that was one of those teachers at Elkhead?
Not a relative. Shorty and Stella took care of the teachers and did the teacherage.
I thought you
No.
had
Nope.
a long distance. Long
Yeah.
back.
Nope. They never taught. And Grandma Marie says, Grandma in her old age, she says, you know, my mom and dad were working all the time. I really didn't even know them. She goes, I didn't get the love I wanted. So she was so happy for the teachers, because she felt like she was a little bit neglected. And she says, and I worked in the cafe all the time. Well, you can see these other photos, and she had lots of time with her friends. Right? But that was one of her regrets, is her mother couldn't be a mother to her. Which I was like, oh, Grandma Stella? My great-grandma who just loves on me and so I think sometimes generations skip. You can be a very non-demonstrative mother, and then the grandkids come along. So, and she revered her father, Shorty, for being such a hard worker and being, doing things for other people. Like, I think it's so cool that you have a restaurant and no one ever got turned away. That's cool. That's a sense of community, for sure. So, I would hope that all of us can pass it forward in some way too. Okay? Hey, yeah?
Was Elkhead the school that the two young women in Nothing Daunted?
Yes, that's the same school. Yep, same school up there. Yeah, if you ever want to know about history of Ferry Carpenter and the schoolhouse up there, a grandchild of one of the teachers, she wrote for the New Yorker, and she came across her grandmother's, all her letters back home from being a teacher up there for a few years, compiled them and made a book. It is amazing. History, and she gets into the history of Hayden and Ferry Carpenter and all that. It's a really good read.
She got all the letters from her friends' family also.
Did she? Nice.
Yeah, so it's called Nothing Daunted. And there's another book written by Ferry's granddaughter about the Elkhead community. So it's a lot more of the history, but they're both great reads if you're interested, because it's really unique.
And one of them was here a few years ago.
Yes,
So,
Belle Zars is
Sure.
her name. Yeah.
Belle Zars.
Mhm.
Yep. She's a wealth of information. We need to get her to talk sometime.
Yes, she can talk about
For
it.
sure. And guess what? We did an hour.
Okay.